Welcome to the latest in the ARIS Innovator Demo Series, Workflows that Work for You. Today, we will hear from Gary Wilmot, Solutions Consultant here at ARIS. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that during the webinar, everyone is on global mute. If you have any questions, please submit them in the questions panel, and we'll answer as many as possible in the Q&A session at the end. Lastly, this session is being recorded, and when it is available, you'll receive an email with the link. With that, Gary, do you want to get us started?
Yes, thanks, Brenna, and thanks everyone for joining us today, especially during these particularly challenging times. Our topic today is workflow. Now, workflow is not a new technology. There have been workflow applications being used and developed over decades, and there's quite a few that are currently using workflow applications, perhaps many of you yourself. The issue, though, sometimes it becomes evident that some of these applications are designed to work in a world, well, maybe it looks something like this. Everyone's happy, everyone's smiling, everyone loves their job, there's no big problems, things are proceeding exactly as they expected and planned every day. So the question is this the world that you work in, or is it more something perhaps like this? Things don't always go according to plan. Sometimes technology is an issue, sometimes personnel is an issue, sometimes bigger outside issues like we're facing now crop up. That is the real world. The reality is we all work in a combination of these. So it's not great all the time. Hopefully it's not terrible all the time. But as the saying goes, it is what it is. So we have to deal with that, the world we all work in. So that's what we'll focus on today, is how ARIS Innovator Workflow helps you and works for you in the world you work in. To do so, we're going to, during the demonstration, take a view of workflow from 4 different perspectives. First, a workflow participant. Second, a workflow or process coordinator. Third, an executive level, and finally, an administrator, ARIS Innovator PLM administrator. So with that, let's get on to the live demo. And we'll start by taking a view as a typical participant. So to do so, here's ARIS Innovator. I've logged in as demo user Mike. First thing Mike in the real world needs to know is that he is a participant in a workflow. How does that happen? Well, in ARIS Innovator, each user has their own individual area called an in-basket, and this is where automatically Mike receives notifications that he is required participant in any type of workflow. And because I know many of you, if not most, are already asking this, the answer is yes. These notifications also can easily go to email with a link for Mike right into Innovator. But for sake of time today, we're just going to stay in Innovator. So there's quite a bit here that's on Mike's plate, but he can easily sort through this. So for example, perhaps he just wants to see ECO items. So he can, just like he can in anything else, he can search and sort on ECOs. He could look at project tasks as opposed to workflow tasks. Those are all in the same area here. He can sort by, and usually by default, he's interested in what are active assignments, meaning that these are current and he is, so to speak, on the clock for these. Not limited to that though. As an example, it's good sometimes to know what's coming down the pipe. So Mike can also take a look in the real world of what he's going to be on the hook for and coming up. So this is a nice kind of heads up type of view. But getting back to reality for today, let's take a look at what's sitting on Mike's active in-basket tasks. And let's pick one of these to work on as a participant. So we'll pick this particular ECO. Another question Mike has, and information that's useful to him, is where does he sit in this workflow? How did it get to him and where is it going? So here's a live workflow map. If you can see the yellow highlighting, this is Mike's assignment and how it got to him and where it can go. Also, with just a click, Mike can see more details such as an audit trail of signatures of who's initiated this and who's already signed off when and any comments. Of course, another thing that's most important at this point to Mike is what does he have to do? He's got notice, he knows where this fits in context of the overall workflow. What is his assignment? He clicks here, and here is the actual ECO item for this particular ECO 1015. It has a form that can be configured just like any other form in Aris Innovator to suit your business processes. And then down at the lower end here, we see what's called the impact matrix. And this allows Mike to see details about this particular change. Here we see the affected part. It is an assembly. We see that the item is being revised from Rev A to Rev B and the associated bill of materials. Well, what's going on with the bill of materials? Well, here we see right in the impact matrix, a couple of these are being proposed to be removed components. We're revising the top level to accommodate those component changes. And along with it, we're not limited to just the part item types, but we can also see related supporting documents such as CAD documents or related supporting documents. So in this case, the CAD documents will also be revised to reflect the update to the BOM. As a quick aside, this workflow or any workflow can contain sub workflows. So in this example, we have a sub workflow called an enterprise document review, and that allows the individual component types to go to different participants with their own process. So for example, these CAD drawings might go to the CAD designers, while the BOM update might go to different individuals or participants, and that's totally flexible. These are live links. This allows Mike to quickly take a look at the related information. So now we're starting very quickly to make use of a true digital thread. A process is there. Mike doesn't have to go look and hope he's looking at the right items to change. They're delivered to him automatically. He can also trace the digital thread as far as he needs. For example, if he needs to look at some of these supporting documents, they're right here as part of the thread of our extruder assembly. And he can even go all the way back to things such as requirements. Maybe something has changed because of a requirement change and those need to be updated or vice versa. Also, what's very important, especially today, literally today, is that Mike can collaborate with others in this process. He's not the lone participant by any means. And he might need to do so remotely and securely. So here, Mike can open up a visual collaboration discussion panel that is related to this particular change and its impacted items. So Mike can go through and he can be assured that this conversation is secure. It follows the permission models of Aris Innovator for participants and related items. He can quickly scroll through and see comments. He can click and see markups that others perhaps contributed so he knows exactly what's going on. And he can even himself access, in this case, a 3D model of the CAD design without ever opening up a CAD file or consuming a CAD license. It's all right here in the context of the item and the discussion. So this becomes very useful. For example, Mike might want to query this a little more deeply. So he can go in and, for example, see a list of the product structure itself. This is live. He can click and identify things. He can also query them as far as information. This is a very accurate geometric model. So Mike can come in and he can do measurements. He can do exploded views, section views, all with just the click of a mouse, enabling him to really understand what's going on as he needs, relevant to what he needs to do as part of this ECO process. He can also contribute. So he can view what others have done. He can query the model. He can use the model to do a quick markup. We'll keep it simple here, but without ever opening up a CAD file, he can create a red line, a markup, an associated comment, and add this immediately into the discussion thread. So as he does this, you'll see in just a second, this will be added to the discussion thread and it's available for anyone as a participant to immediately view. At this point, let's say that Mike is finished with his work on this. So now he needs to designate that he's finished by doing a sign off. He can do so right from the ECO item. And again, he can see where this came from, where it's going, and he can do a vote to sign off. One thing I want to point out is each activity in the workflow can be broken down into more granular tasks. And there's no limit to how many tasks you define before a user that a user needs to address before they can sign off. This is just a simple example. And the reason we call it voting is because Mike has choices here. He can go ahead and do a fast track change. If necessary, it can be submitted to a review board. But also, since this is the real world, he might not, in every case, just sign off as if everything is fine. He could delegate to someone else or refuse it if he is given those permissions within this workflow. We'll more on that in a second. But let's say that Mike goes ahead and says that everything is fine. He's going to sign off. So he'll enter in his authentication if required and sign off on the workflow. And as soon as he does that, the information updates. We see immediately that's added to the audit trail that is always with this particular item, a workflow. And going back to the form, we can see the workflow status itself is now released. And as a result of that, Innovator has been configured in this case to automatically release the affected item. So at this time or any other time down the road, this historical information is immediately available, up to date. So by opening the extruder now, we see that it is at Rev B released. I can click and see any changes that had been run against this. So of course, we're going to see the ECO we just did. We see the ECO, but we also see any other previous or pending workflows that are associated with this particular item and rev. Because it's Rev B, you can probably guess that there was a previous rev. So if Mike wants to go back at a later time and query what were the previous versions, he can just as easily click. He sees the Rev A version of this. He sees that it's been superseded. If he likes, he can go ahead and compare side by side this Rev A with the current Rev B and look visually and query as he needs. So that gives us a nice feel for kind of that perfect world we talked about. That one worked out very well, just as we planned. But back to the real world, let's take a situation where the process as planned is just not going to work for whatever reason. For example, let's open up this particular ECO that Mike has been assigned. Just like before, you're going to see that it has the impacted items associated with it, any sign off or previous information. But at this case, for whatever reason, Mike is proactively going to designate that he will not be able to complete this. And he might leave a quick comment here. We'll just keep it simple. So now when he refuses it, that's great for Mike because it's going to drop off of his in basket. We'll do a quick update here. So Mike's off the hook. But what happens to that workflow? Well, workflows can have what's designated as a process coordinator. So let's go back and now we're switching gears. And let's just take a quick step of where we are. We're done viewing the participant. Let's go and look at how a coordinator can handle situations such as these. A coordinator is somebody that's been given permissions beyond just a normal participant. So let's see, the coordinator here is Terry. Let's take a look at Terry's view. If we update his in basket, we'll see that he gets the notice of this ECO. Now this may come as a surprise to him. He's not assigned at this step, but as we've seen before, he can simply open this see where it is. Okay, it was in the draft changes here, but why did it come to me? We can see that it was refused by the participant. It automatically goes to Terry as the coordinator, but other specific roles can be designated there as well. So Terry can deal with this in various ways based on what might happen in the real world. He can go ahead, for example, he can do it himself and sign off on it, or he can go ahead and delegate it to another responsible individual. So Terry can go and do a quick search on some appropriate participants, and hopefully Terry can spell better than I can. So we'll do a search. We'll assign this to Diane. Now, when he completes this, we'll quickly go back in as the participant just for a quick change here. We'll sign out as Mike, log out quickly, and we'll log in as Diane. As before, she will get notice that something is now assigned to her. Could have been through email. In this case, we're just staying in Innovator. And she may be surprised, just like Terry was. Well, she was not anticipating this, but just as Terry did, she can go query the workflow map, see how it got to her, and then she can get to work and she can sign off as the responsible individual. And this is all trapped in the audit trail so that from now on, we'll know that it really was Diane that completed this, not Mike. So that's one instance where somebody proactively said, I'm not able or available to do this for whatever reason. Let's go back in and talk about a similar but different scenario. What about if it's not a proactive issue where someone notified Terry? Maybe it just happened. Mike is no longer available. He's out sick. He's on vacation. He's left the company. How would a workflow coordinator deal with that? Well, Terry can go ahead and search on any processes in the system. That's quite a bit of information. So let's go ahead and limit that down to just what he's assigned to as the coordinator. Update. And let's take an example here on this workflow that Terry has been giving a heads up that Mike's not around for whatever reason. Use your imagination. He can come in as the workflow coordinator. He actually has the ability to edit this on the fly. So let's look at the workflow. He can come in and see where it is, where it's been. If I click here, he can see the assignments. Mike's not around. Terry has the ability to replace Mike with someone else. So just as he did before, he might go ahead and assign a different, let's get this out of the way here, a different participant, or he could go ahead and just like he did, he can assign it to Diane or someone else. Alternatively, what he can do is back on the workflow, whether it's because of this issue or not, back on the workflow, he can also cancel it outright. So this may be because of personnel issues. This may be just because we changed our mind, circumstances changed, a customer canceled an order. Mike, as workflow coordinator, has the ability to go ahead and cancel that, and that will become trapped again in the database as soon as he votes off on that. So that helps us to see how a coordinator can intervene and deal with real world situations. Quickly, we want to go to look at perhaps an executive view. So let's just see where we are in our demo, and we'll update now to go to an executive level. And what's an executive interested in? Well, it may not be so much the day-to-day ins and outs of participating in a workflow, but an executive might be more interested in what's going on overall with his organization's processes. Aris Innovator makes that very easy. We can go log back in. We'll give Mike a promotion here and let him be an executive. And he's going to go ahead and look at some pre-configured reports. Innovator ships with some basic reports out of the box, but these are actually what we call self-service reports. They're easy for certainly administrators or even experienced users to go in and create reports that give them just the information they need. So in this case, we're looking at a summary report of all ECO processes that are have been or are currently active in our system. Here I see a listing of the filtered information I want. It can be sorted live by priority, by who's the change coordinator, its current status, but we can also visually see a quick summary. So here's a total of all the workflows broken down by status. We see we have 15 in a release state, 4 are still in work, and we can also sort them and rank them by priority. So quickly, if we look here, we'll see this black is priority 1, green is priority 2, red is priority 3, and we can see how many are in that are released are of that priority, or how many that are still in work are of a particular priority, in this case 2. We can also filter on this if that's a lot of information. So if I just want to see, again, the ones that Terry's responsible for, I can go ahead, add a filter, and we see it updates accordingly. Finally, what we'd like to do is talk about workflows from an administrative standpoint. This is all well and good. Hopefully you like what you're seeing here, but if there's administrators in the audience, they're probably thinking, great, what does this mean for me to get this implemented in our ARIS implementation? So we'll log in one more time as administrator. And we'll take a look. As administrator, we have the ability to go ahead, look at existing workflow maps, or create a new one. In the limited time we have left, I want to step you through just to show you how straightforward and actually easy this is. Here's a blank workflow. I'm starting from scratch. We have just a start and end. So let's go ahead and just get rid of this first path. Give ourselves a little more space here. You see it's drag and drop. And we'll add a couple activities. The first thing I want you to notice here is that there is no predefined list of activity types that I have to figure out which one is the one I want for this step. And I'm limited to a predefined list. To add an activity, you simply add an activity. Give it a name. And as you can see here, we won't have time to go through all of the options here, but each activity has quite a bit of information and logic that can be added to it. So we can add a duration, of course, we can have reminders, we can have escalations, we can deal with things like voting weights, who it should be escalated to, we can add a subflow. Also, a very common thing is, well, who is this going to be assigned to? Let's take a look at how easy it is to make an assignment. I could assign this to individuals. Probably hardwiring that is not the best way to go. You might choose groups, okay? And that would be probably better. Even a little more flexible is something we call a team. A team is like a group, but it's dynamic for certain situations. Briefly, this means that you can have one workflow, one change process that can be assigned dynamically to different teams. One's electrical, one mechanical, one software, but you don't have to build a specific individual unique workflow for each one. It can look at who's on this particular team. Is this electrical, mechanical, and it can make the appropriate decisions on the fly. So we'll just add one more activity. We'll call this review. And now all we need to do is add a path to connect these. So we'll connect this to this to this. Each one has a name. So when you saw me sign off on these, the choices that were in the voting area are based on these paths. So they automatically fill in for you. If we want a little more flexibility, it's just as easy to add a path going back. We'll make that a little bit easier to visually see. And now we have the ability, if I can click, to go ahead and send things back based on decisions. It's as easy as that to go ahead and save this off. Many, though, don't want to start from scratch, and that's fine. We give you the ability to start with something useful. So out of the box, we'll give you workflows that are CM2 compliant. So for example, we have an ECO, ECN, ECR. Let's take a quick look at a problem report, part of a CM2 process. We can see what it is. Actually, in this case, if I want to leave that alone, I can quickly do a save as. And now I can edit to my heart's content and based off of this as a template, if you will. So what I might do is say, you know what? I want to add a path that allows me to not just mark this as unverified, but I want to also perhaps send it rejected outright. Or from here, I might give us another chance to go back, review it, and so on. So all of this can be done with a point and click. One other very important thing from a workflow standpoint, as attached items like a part or document go through the workflow, often you will want the lifecycle status of that to automatically change. If it's in review, you don't want people to have permission to come in and change it while it's being reviewed. So it's easy to come in here and just add from a list the appropriate life cycles, such as for an attached item that's a part. And we simply come in and say, I want to, in this case, change it from preliminary to in review. And now the attached item will automatically go through this lifecycle change. And it's verified to make sure that it's valid. So hopefully at this point, we've shown you quite a bit of flexibility, both from a user, a coordinator, an executive, and an administrative standpoint, to not just deal with things that automatically perfectly proceed step to step, but to deal with things that happen in the real world. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and open it back up to Brenna for questions.
Thank you, Gary. If you have any questions, please submit them into the Q&A panel. We only have time for a couple, so Gary, let's get started. Can you assign a workflow task to a group and then any person in the group can complete it?
Yes, excellent question. So we weren't able to cover every scenario, but there is a option for a member of a group to claim a workflow task. So yes, it can go to all the appropriate members of the group. And when somebody in their in-basket grabs it and they simply click and say claim, it drops off of everyone else's in-basket in the group.
Thank you, Gary. We have time for one more. So can the owner of the ECO change the workflow or does it have to be the coordinator?
Permissions are very flexible within Aris Innovator. So you can set a permission model to let individuals or roles edit out of the box. It would typically be the process coordinator, but an owner can also be configured to do that as well. It's really up to you how you want to give permissions.
Great, thank you, Gary. And thank you all for your questions. For any we didn't answer, they will be addressed directly within the next few days. Before you go, be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, where we share the latest updates, news, product information, and more. We thank you for coming today and look forward to having you next time. Have a good day.